Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Reanimated. This is Stuart, one of your hosts. Joining me today out of Brooklyn is AJ Conrad. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm actually out of Connecticut today, but
Sorry,
good.
Out of Brooklyn. So far out of Brooklyn, you're in Connecticut.
Correct.
But welcome back to the podcast. It's been a couple of weeks. Sorry if gentle listeners, but somebody had to go camping with the Cub Scouts.
Ooh, how was that? Did you see any zombies in the woods?
No, I just honed my survival skills, by staying in a cabin.
Did it have water?
Cooking with charcoal. No, there was no plumbing in the cabin. Or electricity. And though there was electricity, actually, it was not really hardcore camping. But it was mostly about watching my kids throwing fishing poles in a pond.
Nice. Well, that seems good. What are your feelings about camping? Were you a camper before all of this?
Oh, I'm a city kid, man.
I am not a camper. I am not a camper.
Man, there's nothing worse than waking up after a night of terrible sleep and it's cold as F. and you're just like, where's my Keurig? I can't make coffee. I went the whole weekend without coffee, which sounds like,
why didn't you just bring a pour over?
Because I'm not fancy that way. I'm an electric coffee maker person.
It's not that hard, and it's also could keep you in caffeine. Just saying for next time.
Maybe, yeah.
Some things for you, my friend. Because
instead, I woke up, drank water, like a savage, and then barbecued a bunch of bacon and hash browns because I was I was part of breakfast team Saturday morning. So I was cooking for 40. Yeah, it was
insane.
It was a lot, but overall it was pretty enjoyable. The weather was nice. There were no bears.
Sweet.
No, we succeeded, and a lot of it I was just dad and the two kids, and I didn't lose either of them. I did, but not permanently. So
younger or older?
What?
Which one did you lose?
Both of them. Yeah.
Oh, recently.
At different times.
Oh, at different times. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Well, I have no such exciting tales. I just think I've been hanging out in the cemetery, seeing the cherry blossoms, which have been awesome. Like kind of insanely awesome. So there's that. Not sure what else. Eating some pizza, doing the typical Brooklyn things.
And in Connecticut?
In Connecticut, we're just out hanging here for Mother's Day weekend.
What are typical Connecticut things, would you say?
I don't know. Boating shoes. I don't know. I don't really know. There's not a lot of Connecticut things going on.
Put a sweater over your shoulders.
Yeah, I just wander around. We're kind of by the water, so we'll probably do a little hike later. But nothing too much going on here.
Well, delightful. In a place where there is a lot going on, were the last two episodes of season 11.2 of The Walking Dead. Good grief. And we're going to get to those.
Yeah. So before we hop into that, we do have a couple of very small news tidbits. Really, honestly, almost nothing, but
hardly worth mentioning at all.
It's probably just, we'll do it and then hop into the episodes because I have a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover. So why don't we just knock these out? But basically, this is almost like a non-article, or maybe even we saw sort of something about Danny Boyle talking about this in a similar fashion, honestly, just as sort of vague suggestion that he'd be interested in doing a third 28 Days Later. And then Alex Garland sort of drops this little tidbit that he'd be definitely into doing this, and kind of talks a little bit about that.
The fact that these guys both go do interviews and then this part of their interview gets pulled out and made into its own article,
right?
Every time they talk about it, they must see the level of excitement that people could have.
Part of me is is this just them doing a bit of a test? Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe
to see if it has obviously they know that people would be into this idea. So I just think, so let's see what happens. But I think that there's something to be said that they both have kind of mentioned it. So maybe this is something that is potentially going to happen. And if it does, I'm there. I'm all for it.
Yeah. And it's also important to remember that they had nothing to do with 28 Weeks Later, as far as I know.
True. So there may be some things that they were they wanted to I don't know, just kind of deal with. So Yeah, that could be a cool idea depending on what it is. So there's that. And then you had found this thing about the showrunner of the Tales of the Walking Dead.
Yeah, so that's, well, first of all, the lead here is that Tales of the Walking Dead is coming this summer, which I had no idea. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
guess I didn't know that. I thought it was a little. I thought it was probably like the fall or even next year.
Well, I feel like we were seeing all those casting announcements just a month ago, so I was like, oh, there's no way in hell that they're in production because they're still announcing casting, but maybe that's not how things work. Who knows? Either way, it's coming this summer. It's what, 6 episodes, so it'll be a nice amuse bouche before we get to Halloween season, I assume.
Yep.
And the final third of the season 11, because I think that's when that's coming. And so there's just basically it was Channing Tatum on Insta stories saying we've final mix is down for the first episode of Tales of the Walking Dead. If you're trying to find that Insta story on his Channing Powell very professional is the tag of his Insta handle. It's not there anymore because it was a story, and those are, you know, frustratingly ephemeral. I think we can all agree sometimes when my wife like DMs me an Insta story that she wants me to look at and laugh at like a puppy or something, and it's gone by the time I look at it. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I suck. I didn't have the presence of mind to go immediately to look at that link. But this is kind of the same thing. So Channing Powell is saying, hey, the first episode's mixed down. I don't really know what that means, but it's mixed down. And then there's still the teaser, which we have never looked at as a podcast, and it's the 16-second teaser of the show. The screen is split into 6 different little squares, and showing like some of our hero cast, like Olivia Munn and Terry Crews and Parker Posey and Jillian Bell. Is it? Look, this is, I still have a lot of hype for this show, just based on the people that they've brought together. I like the idea of an anthology for this universe, and I'm excited for it to come out. And the little clip they have of Parker Posey in this teaser is insane. If people haven't seen it yet, I won't say what happens, but it's pretty wild. So
she's always good for some insanity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she is a classic. So Tales of the Walking Dead coming soon.
Cool. All right. We will keep a lookout for that, and we'll definitely review it this summer once it's out.
You better believe it. Which brings us then to the main event, which is 2 episodes, the final 2 episodes of season 11.2. These are entitled Trust and Acts of God. They are written by Kevin Diebold and directed by Lily Marie. Yeah. And then Nicole Morante Matthews and Catriona McKenzie did the second one that we're talking about today. So in Trust, remind us, since it's been a couple weeks, HA, do you remember what did we do last episode on The Walking Dead?
Oh, you're really like making me
putting you on the spot.
Back into no. I knew we had the whole basically Die Hard siege in the
yes.
in the tower thing going on. So this actually like leads right from that into this episode, and it's honestly one of the most hilarious scenes ever, in my opinion.
Okay,
because,
why was it
so
because funny?
It's like you've got Lance basically questioning Gabriel and Aaron, and it feels like a teacher questioning 2 grade school children that are like caught in a lie or something like that. And you know, he really lays out, he's like, are you telling me that basically a one-armed man and a one-eyed man survived this like crazy thing and none of the commandos did, and there's no bigger story to it? And I mean, Lance clearly knows that something fishy has gone on, but like, you know, he's playing the long game here. I feel like they were all, quite frankly, on the verge of cracking up in the scene, and it wouldn't shock me. They like
Josh Hamilton, who plays, I think it's Josh Hamilton. He said during the scene, actually Daryl smacked him, Norman Reedus smacked him on the back of the head during one of the takes because there was a giant bee on him. He was talking about it on Talking Dead. But I think he's a really funny dude. Josh Hamilton. He was correct. He was making a lot of really funny jokes on Talking Dead. So I would say any scene with him in it was probably pretty challenging.
Yeah.
And he
And
also
then
talked about how he does his, he's doing this like vacant smiling thing all the time, where he's
mhm.
like looking at you and he's smiling, but it's like a completely menacing scene.
Yeah, and you're like, is he gonna just totally gut somebody at this point? Like that, it's always it's like a psychopath smile. So
He
it's like
takes it
always
right up to the edge, and then he's like, "Oh,
yeah.
okay, didn't mean to ruffle any feathers. So let's go." And then like this next scene, we're like, "Oh, he's going to Hilltop." So yeah, of course he's he's always being threatening, even when he's like de-escalating. He's actually ratcheting it
Right.
up.
And even like in the scene, so you've got Gabriel and Aaron, like, and they're like, yeah, yeah, that's our unbelievable story. Sure. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
it.
And
And
they're great. They're like those two, Seth.
they're great. But the thing that really just made me laugh out loud was Daryl's like side eye to
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Both he does, and you're like, oh man. And then like he does it again, like before he goes back down the stairs, like he gives him a side eye, like, oh my God, you guys. And then, you know, and he's vouched for them. He's like, oh yeah, they could do this because they're I've been on the road with them. They're pretty they're pretty set. They're good. They're badass. And then as he's like walking down the stairs behind Lance, he like really looks back at them like, you guys are just unbelievable, right?
Or
It's
he's like,
like,
we're in a hole and we have to dig
or
ourselves out.
we're in it deep. So good lord.
It's interesting to think about Daryl's position with Hornsby in this episode, which is sort
Mhm.
of a trusted member of the team. I don't know why he's never in uniform. Doesn't make sense.
Nope.
And compared with where he is by the time the next episode ends,
Right.
there's a real journey here, right? Like of Daryl just like not really making choices, but like making unavoidable choices. There's no other way for him, I think, to go through the events of the next two episodes. But it's just interesting to look at where
Well,
he is
and
here and where he
this
ends
is
up.
always, yeah, totally. And this is like the theme of this episode, kind of, because it's like you've got it's, and Lance actually says this to them, like, oh, we all want the same thing here. And it's like, well, do you? Probably
Yeah,
not.
because nobody knows what you want, you psycho.
Yeah, because nobody knows what Lance wants. But also it's the sort of the OG crew. So it's Daryl, it's Gabriel and Aaron, and then you've got on, in other places in this episode, you've got Mercer and Princess, and then you've got Eugene and Max. And there's a lot of like, which side are you on kind of questions going on here. And if you like, and knowing that if you sort of ally with one side, that you're going to be bringing the wrath of the Commonwealth, right? And so that's, it's and they play this out pretty well, I think, in terms of how they let this story unfold. So I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, and you also have Ezekiel and Carol, right?
Yep.
So it's like multiple stories sort of in this similar vein.
And sorry, my daughter walked in, but did you also talk about Princess and Mercer?
Yeah, I mentioned them
Okay.
too.
Yeah, those were some interesting scenes. I felt like definitely lending some new layers to Mercer's character,
Mhm.
where he's being emotionally available, and then in the same scene, emotionally unavailable. It's kind of funny,
Right.
actually, that that he's like, "Oh, I love listening to you talk," and this is pillow time or pillow talk time, and then he's like, "I'm fine."
Right.
Um,
And I mean, and then, it escalates pretty quickly with the Lance kind of group and with Daryl, because like, he immediately like marches over to Hilltop, demands to be let in. You've got Maggie, and this is the whole scene we had sort of been teased with at the gate, where Maggie's like, I don't want to, you shouldn't come in here. And then Daryl is like, I don't want people to die, so I'm going to go and handle this. And he's like, come on, Maggie, let's just do what they want. And, you know, because of that trust, she does let them in. And there is this tense, like, they're searching for like basically some kind of evidence or smoking gun that Maggie's team,
literal guns, I mean, is what
literal
they're
guns,
searching for.
the ones that were stolen. And so there's one thing that I just didn't sit, like, I just was like, huh, during this episode. But anyway, They
Oh, I
kind of
thought
go
the
through
truck scene was really good. It was
the
actually
truck
pretty
scene.
tense.
Okay, the truck scene was amazing, but also Josh Hamilton's acting in this when he's like trying the truck was
Yeah.
awesome.
He's so good. And if you look, you're watching Maggie in the background, she's breathing heavy. Like, why doesn't she know that the truck's not going to start?
Right, right. It's just weird. And
Because she
anyway,
kind of goes between her body language saying, I'm super nervous, to telling him, you have till sundown, then you got to get out of here. I don't know that I would have even given him till sundown.
right.
Like they've had plenty of time. It's not that easy unless you're burying them, I think, to hide how many boxes of guns, I assume.
Right. And I kind of almost thought that a better tactic is if Maggie had just been nonchalantly like sunbathing or drinking a lemonade and being like,
Yeah,
hey,
because
you're gonna find
there's nothing there. So they should, yeah,
right.
in a way, they should just be more chill. And she should probably have Herschel with her when there is a
Yeah.
unfriendly bunch of people in the compound. Herschel, that's obviously that's the scene that turns everything around, because Lance Hornsby has terrible instincts and thinks that he can go talk to somebody's little
Kid.
child without a parent there and then actually put his hands on them, not in a threatening way, but even at all. And
Mhm.
Elijah is right there and is able to intercede, but in interceding also like starts World War III.
Yeah, but I also want to, this is the other thing is that, Lance suddenly whips out a hat that he's like, it's this fits
right.
just fine. And I find it very hard to believe that, first of all, that Lance would have noticed that Herschel had worn this hat before. And that he would assume that, you know what I mean? Like, this
Yeah.
just seems a little nuts. Also his detective skills, like we're relying a lot. Apparently he's like a super sleuth because he can, match tire tracks or whatever it is between like where like it's just ridiculous. So
Yeah.
anyway, but this standoff is definitely a key point because Daryl turns a gun on Lance, and I think that no
Yes.
matter what, and this just shows exactly where Daryl is in terms of loyalty. It's always going to be with Maggie. It's always going to be with his people and not the Commonwealth. And that was like, I think no matter what happens after this, Lance is like, oh, you need to die.
This is
Um,
almost an interesting juxtaposition between Gabriel and Aaron.
mhm,
They're faced with like basically incontrovertible proof that Lance Hornsby is evil in the last episode. And yet in
mhm.
this episode, they're still pretending that they're on the level, right? And Daryl doesn't really know what's been going on. So he's still just kind of playing along. But as soon as he has proof that Lance Hornsby has made a stupid mistake and
Mhm.
has the potential to like tell his guards to start shooting everybody, Daryl is immediately like
Nope.
holding his gun up to Lance Horns. And I was like, you can't go back from this. I was
Nope.
actually really surprised to see him out in the woods with them at their camp after this scene.
Yeah, me too. I was like, oh, this is just gonna, I thought it was gonna go down much more quickly, in fact, like within moments of this happening, but it didn't. So I had a similar, like, oh, interesting.
I mean, it makes for
Um,
better dramatic storytelling that Lance Hornsby waits like an entire day and a half to get his revenge, I think, or
yeah.
to try to get his revenge rather. But it is kind of wild that he's like, oh yeah, Aaron and Gabriel and Daryl, come on back with me. Of course, Daryl is out in the bush here, and his kids, his adopted family are all still in the Commonwealth. So he has to also realize like he's saving or interceding on Maggie's behalf in this moment, but he's putting his family at great risk also.
Right, right. And, and then this next piece where Lance like finds Leah in the middle of the woods and it turns out she's the one who's been taking the guns.
And that was a bit
That
easy.
was a little ridiculous. And also, like, I mean, look, I think that after the confrontation, he's like, oh, Maggie and everybody just here has to die. And I'm going to do what my nefarious plan was all along here, since they won't like fall in line. I don't know exactly what that plan is. And I think still we're missing some pieces, but it immediately turns and he, clear like that seemed a little like far. I don't know, to have to Leah, okay, you stole our guns, but now you're gonna do this thing for me. And then
Yeah, like the fact that he is recruiting Leah and trying to murder Maggie. Maggie hasn't done anything to him. I mean, in theory, she refused to join the little
right.
band of communities. But is that as bad as murdering a convoy of soldiers and stealing his guns?
Right.
Like,
That's what I was like. That seems a little like a strange, I don't know. But anyway, there is that. And again, I just enjoy the heck out of any of Josh Hamilton's scenes. I think
Yeah.
he's incredible. And he just continues to be incredible.
Yeah,
And
he's really putting in some good work in this episode. Uh and somehow was able to talk Leah into not killing him at the very end.
right.
But fine. Also, it was a little odd that, like, I guess he went off without Daryl or Gabriel or Aaron, and that's to go talk to Leah. Obviously, Daryl wasn't there, or he would have probably had something to say about it. And they go off, and we find out what they're doing the next episode. In Commonwealth, you've got some Max and Eugene stuff. He's asking her to, like, steal secret files to look into the house escapade that Daryl and Rosita had to go through.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Rosita is like basically looped Eugene in, and also Connie and Kelly are aware, and the list comes out, and they're like trying to figure out what the list is, and there's like a lot of people on it. And so they need help, and Eugene is like convincing Max to do it. And granted, she's scared, and there's no, I mean, again, these are all like, that if you are caught or if things happen, you're going to be in a lot of like, and your family might be in a lot of trouble.
She's scared, but she, like, after Mercer, her brother, Michael, I guess, turns her down when she asks for his help. She goes from 0 to 60 and basically becomes like a revolutionary leader. I kind of think that's pretty fun for her character to just be like, oh, you're just a poster child then, or like just a poster. I'm going to go and lead the revolution because we can't unknow what we know, is what she says to Eugene later. I feel like it's an interesting take and turn for this character. I'm kind of enjoying it.
Yeah, and she also is sort of testing a little bit and making sure that she's like, I think she, like, there's a moment between her and Milton where she is trying to like I think it's she's trying to not convince herself, but still gather some evidence that she's right about her instincts. And you know, if it's this whole thing and the Miltons are actually doing things for the good of the people or change or whatever, she just tries to put one more plug in, and there's this whole moment between her and Milton before she actually does sort of turn into a spy and steals files. And she basically is like, oh, there's extra money in this fund, can we set up a scholarship for people who don't have the money? And Milton's like, oh no, it goes right back into the event fund or whatever. And then I felt like that was, even if she had been sort of undecided, that decided her for good.
Yeah.
And so she does go and she steals a file or two
in the next episode. Yeah.
Oh, in the next episode, sorry. But that's like, she's convinced herself, and it is a lot of risk, but she's just really all on board. So there's that. And then you've got the Carol and Ezekiel thing, and also Ezekiel and Theo. Tommy, sorry.
Tommy and Theo. Theo's the nurse, I think.
Oh, that's right. So Theo is already kind of convinced, or may have been convinced by Ezekiel, but he's on board. And then Tommy, is looking for more. He's very upset about the fact, so many things, but
remember, he didn't want to be a surgeon because he couldn't handle the pressure. That's why he was happy making cakes in season 10.
But I think the question is, I don't know that it was probably some of the pressure, but I think it's also the fact that there's clearly like a case system here, and he knows how many people are suffering and that he can only help so many. And
I don't know. I'm still like really not, I don't love this character.
I don't love where they've gone with it.
Frankly, his accent has gotten a lot better in this episode.
And his, even his whole thing making cakes before still doesn't totally make sense. But anyway, but he's like, totally on board.
Guy can't handle the pressure of being a surgeon in the zombie apocalypse. Decides to become a baker. It's not a compelling story.
No, it's not. But anyway, he's all on board with this like this little underground clinic that Ezekiel has somehow set up. I also think that a little bit of this execution in terms of the clinic and Ezekiel and Tommy stealing supplies, like, come on guys, can you be a little more subtle than this? Like, because they're not at all.
Yeah, the walking
they get caught like so quickly. And then it's like Carol comes through and it's like she definitely bribes the guards to not talk, but come on, they're gonna talk, right? So there's all that kind of stuff going on. And I just think this is all about loyalty this episode, and which side of the line are you on? And it's definitely becoming clear that the Commonwealth is not what they purport themselves to be. And even if they aren't, people are coming to the conclusion, or our people, or the main people that we are following, that, and Mercer even says this. Mercer is like, I know that they aren't doing things as well as they should be. I know that they are dirty, basically, but
it's better than it could be. Yeah.
It's better than it could be. And so you have to kind of make a decision, like, are you going to cause more deaths? Are you going to cause more chaos? Does this help sort of the chaos of the apocalypse? Is this an alternative? And can you live with sort of the negative pieces of it? So that's
Isn't it kind of wild also that an appendectomy wouldn't be considered emergency surgery and get like, right. Like clearly their healthcare is broken. If someone who needs an appendectomy and it's like it ruptures, like, so this woman is having appendicitis in this episode and would have died. And I guess she could have maybe gotten into the hospital, but it would have cost her too much. We don't know if Ezekiel has had to pay for his surgery, but he's clearly post-op, having had his tumor removed, but there's no mention of what he owes for that. Well, so I kind of think that the show could do a little more to describe how the system works.
Well, and I think he says to Carol, it must have cost you a lot to get me into this. So I don't think he owes anything. But I think that it's clear that if you don't have money or you don't have resources, you're not eligible. And so that's why it's so broken. It's like, it doesn't matter that she needed emergency surgery. She's in the lower part of their society. And so she doesn't get that. So she's not, so I think that that's, part of this too. Like the people who are in the higher echelon have access, and the people who are lower in the sort of like, in this, they're at the lower levels. They're sort of I don't want to say the serfs, but that's kind of what it feels like, right?
It does, but it's also not spelled out. I want it to be a little more clear. I didn't love the surgery or the barn stuff, the Ezekiel stuff as much. But it is necessary to try to fill in some of those gaps, especially though the appendectomy, where suddenly Ezekiel and Carol are called in, and like Theo has to go get more meds from the hospital, which hopefully he's better at it than Tommy was. And they're just, they've got the woman bagged, and they're doing like, gauze, dab, pulling out a little thing that's apparently like an appendix. She's got an appendix. That's not right. But like they charge up that scene with the scary music. They're like, all right, anytime you've got somebody who's under surgery, you're like, are they going to die and become a zombie? And I hope somebody has a knife. But then it's like, oh, this was fine. Everything was fine. There was no reason to be concerned. Everybody's okay. And so like in a way, that was kind of like anticlimactic too. Not that I wanted the woman, I didn't want them their like first major surgery in the barn to fail, but the show, the production certainly kind of amped it up a little bit, so that when nothing happened, you were just a little like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they just wanted to have Carol and Ezekiel talking about how they're both lights and darkness.
We're not getting back together either. We're not getting back together.
Maybe they are. We'll see.
We will.
And then Kelly and Connie, their big thing, which I also think is a little weird, it's just like they're gonna write about it and tell everybody about it. And it's like, well, how much evidence? I mean, if you have evidence, and I guess that's what Max got them, sure, but they know you wrote it, so you better have a plan to be gone or something, right?
Yeah, it's and so this is in Acts of God, and I think we've covered everything in Trust. And yeah, I agree. Like, there's, even if they were to publish Rosita's account of what happened at the house and how Sebastian is involved, Rosita and Daryl are the only people, and Mercer are the only people who know about that other than Sebastian. So how do they expect this not to come back on them? Of course.
Right. And I also think that list, anybody who might have known April, or, Tyler or whoever's on that list, I assume that they must either be shut up or gone or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe they do know, and maybe there's like this whole big cover up. One of the things Connie and Kelly say is that, oh, maybe they're holding all these people somewhere, and we don't know more about that.
We still don't
So
know who gave him the list. I mean, it feels less likely that it's Michael
Mercer.
Mercer, because he's
Um,
really trying to stay on the fence and is all torn up that he had shot those other two soldiers at the end of the mansion heist episode, which is what he tells Princess at the end of of Trust. So I feel like I have less of an idea who it might have been at this point, because who is even like a an establishment person who would have access? Is it
right.
one of the PR team, the PR assassins? We don't really know them very well, and I think it looks like they're coming in the flash forward that they showed in Talking Dead. It looks like they are coming back as antagonists in the next.
Yeah, well, maybe it was the fake Max. Who knows? Who
Maybe.
did it? But anyway, we've got that going on. And and then we've got like a huge scene in the and I guess we're into Acts of God now.
Yeah.
We have the huge scene with Maggie knows that Lance is going to retaliate. She definitely knows that. And um she puts her son into Negan and Annie's care, which is like the scene between Maggie and Negan and Annie is great, but specifically the acting between her and Negan is pretty awesome. And the thing that I like about this is that it isn't just like all is forgiven, because it isn't, but she's getting to a place, and I mean, we saw this coming a long time ago, and they had been kind of floating this, and we have seen this sort of building, which I think has been well done. It's not that she forgives him, because I don't know that you can ever fully forgive somebody for something like that. Or I mean, maybe there's some grace you can come to, but she actually says the closest you're ever going to get to that with him, which is that he saved her son's life, and she's not going to forget that, and she's entrusting him to their care. And not only that, but Negan's offering, and Negan is a valuable asset, an ally to bring out, and she's like, no, I need you to take care of my son. And even she admits that Negan's been right, that she shouldn't be like protecting Hilltop, which again, yay, that's a good place to come to now, but too bad you didn't get there earlier. But I thought this was an excellent scene. And it really we know also, because we've seen like the trailers and they've been talking about the next step for these two characters, but we know they're going to go on. But like, I just thought that this was a pretty powerful scene between them, and also with Annie there.
Yeah. Yeah, Annie is clearly like a good mediator for the two of Negan and Maggie, and like the introduction of her and her pregnancy have like definitely given Maggie a reason to trust Negan. And so that's, yeah, I agree, that was a really impactful scene, very important.
And then you've got the whole crazy Lance thing with the Hilltop, and Leah is doing her thing. And then you've also got Daryl and Aaron and Gabriel, like, and I forgot, because we should say that Lance, even when they're like walking, when they are together with Lance like is testing them.
Yeah.
And see, and and Daryl joins in, and you can see where things are going, but he sends them off with another group of soldiers. And I think, you'd have to be pretty dumb to not understand that they're going to get eliminated, and Daryl's and them are not dumb. They get that.
Yeah,
And
I thought that was actually a really good scene where they end up in that junkyard.
Yep.
Or maybe it's just a street that looks like a junkyard because it's 10 years after the apocalypse. But that scene was really good. It's worth pointing out that Daryl does not wait for them to shoot first.
Nope.
He's just like, oh, it's happening, and he shoots first. Poor Romano did not know what he was getting into, and the other Commonwealth soldiers.
Yep.
We still have the same problem of, I mean, no, this isn't the same as the Nakatomi Tower episode where they were shooting civilians, because they know that Gabriel and Aaron and Daryl are dangerous. So they could, I guess, rank and file troops could have been persuaded to do this job. But yeah, it's a cool scene. And although Aaron and Gabriel, I think both get shot, but very minor wounds.
Yeah, and man, does that arm of Aaron's need more damage, right? It's like his bad arm and he gets like knocked in the shoulder. I also thought that like this was just I thought that they were gonna like there's this weird like cut through of a snake coming down off of a bus, which I was like, is
Yeah.
that gonna play into this?
Was
And
that just a snake that happened to be on set that day? And they're like, get a
maybe
close up.
I was like, what is that? Okay, nothing to do with the snake. Okay, cool. And then they like, I liked this little firefight, and I also liked that it was like they all knew that the minute they started doing this, that walkers are going to start coming because of the noise,
Mm-hmm.
and so they used that to their advantage, and got information with the basically being like, okay, do you want a quick death, or do you want to like get eaten by walkers? So I thought that way, and they get obviously the information that Lance is going after Maggie.
It was so sudden and brutal that he just shoots Romano after he gives him like, he doesn't even know that much,
Nope.
Poor Romano. They could have just been like, come on, man, come with us. I don't know, it didn't have to go the way it went, but
Yeah, but
Daryl wasn't messing around.
But Romano has shown pretty much which side he's on, so I don't think that was an option. So I think they actually made the right decision there.
Daryl also shows his hand and answers the radio to Hornsby when Hornsby's calling in. He's like, Romano, what's your status? And he's like, he ain't here no more. And then Hornsby immediately knows that, the gig is up. So I feel like maybe that wasn't the right choice. Maybe just leave the radio unanswered.
Just leave it.
Yeah.
You don't know. Maybe he can't hear you right now. Maybe it puts Lance a little bit more back on his heels, or at least doesn't give him enough info to deal with it.
Yeah, I think it puts him on like on a more of an alert status, which he already was, but like there's no need to get him even more ratcheted up. Let him wonder rather than that would be my take anyway.
Right.
We've also throughout this episode got the locust swarm, which is happening, which is considered this act of God, and that's part of like the cold open is like Hornsby stepping into a puddle of goo was somebody's face. And it's and then you go back and it's like something 19 hours in one act of God earlier. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of scenes of people flipping coins. It's mostly Hornsby flipping coins in this episode. That's part of this like act of God or element, I guess, as well as an actual plague or swarm of locusts. And the swarm of locusts is used for like some sort of sound camo. Mostly, I don't know that they really play much of an impact, but it's mostly like an ambiance kind of thing throughout this episode. And it does, the sound is like unsettling and kind of puts your nerves on edge a little.
Yeah, it's stressful. And I think it's just one sort of like more point that like things are not going well. And it's just this extra piece. And also they're locusts, so you have to assume that there's going to be a problem with food or whatever.
I kept hoping to see that. It like, oh, now we cut to the farms of the Commonwealth that we've never seen. Oh no, the crops. Oh, how are we going to feed these 50,000 people? Maybe that'll come up later on.
I think it probably will. And you've also got, and then you have Leah doing her best assassin thing, which is weird because it's like, Maggie sets up Maggie and the Hilltop people set up some traps, and they do like take out a lot of the soldiers. And then there's this whole like Maggie Leah standoff. And I guess even when Daryl kind of let Maggie let Leah escape rather the last time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all knew that was a mistake. I even think that Daryl knew that was a mistake, but here we are again. And she's stalking Maggie in the woods, and I just, they kept prolonging this, and I wasn't totally bothered by this, but I was also like, there's just no way Maggie would have any chance against somebody that was trained in this way.
I agree. Also, it's tropey and disappointing that they didn't have Leah just kill her when she got the jump on her in the woods. There's no way that somebody this professional would decide to do I'm going to knock you out, drag you to a cabin, tie you up, and then talk to you while you get free.
It's very much like the whole Austin Powers Dr. thing where his son is like, just kill them. Just do it. Why are you waiting? Maybe they'll get away. Why even leave it to chance? And it's like that whole trope, which is
Yep.
pretty funny.
It was
My
very
God,
cliche.
you're monologuing, that whole thing.
Yeah,
So
it was exactly that. And so kind of just, but Maggie's in a spinoff show, as Chris Hardwick was saying on Talking Dead. He's like, I have a feeling that Leah's not going to come out of this scenario.
right.
And it was really predictable that Daryl was going to be the one to
Of course
save
he had to.
Maggie here, because it's his emotional beat to have to kill his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in the hand-to-hand, like the fact that Maggie is able to shoot Leah in the woods at first, even though Leah comes back, Maggie also originally has the upper hand in the fight inside the cabin before Leah does some judo and throws her down.
Well, only because she did have surprise. She had the element of surprise, but again, I just don't think she'd come out of this.
Doesn't feel right.
Does not feel right. But in fact, I almost thought they were going to do this a lot more quickly because of that. Like, I'm like, there's just no way they can put these two people into like a hand-to-hand combat situation where Maggie comes out alive.
Yeah.
So I guess the only thing that you can kind of believe, which is with their whole dialogue before, is that Leah doesn't want to kill Maggie. She wants her to suffer. So I guess there's like something where she's pulling her punches because she wants her to suffer more somehow, or like prolong it. And so in any case, Daryl, takes her out, gives her a headshot. And then I do think that there was like there was the whole thing where Daryl gets Maggie out of the cabin, but sort of grazes Lance's face. And that, I was like, oh, it's on now. He's like grinning. He's like, really, you can just see like when he's like touching his face, how pissed he is. And it's just like, ooh, this isn't gonna go well for anybody. But
now we take it all. And then they do. And this is also, they go straight up fascism imagery with these like vertical banners on the outside of Alexandria.
Okay, I gotta say, okay, just looking at those banners, like what it would take to print those things, I just don't buy it. But
they're making guns and bayonets and bullets. They've got industry. We just have never seen it.
I know we have not seen it, and I guess that's the thing. It's like, okay, but anyway, and then we've got Max with her espionage story, and she has like a weird interaction with Sebastian while she's stealing the papers, and that's kind of strange and tension heavy.
Yeah, Sebastian's another one of these characters like a Hornsby who you don't really know what he's thinking. He's saying one thing and he's acting one way, but there's a lot of pauses and looks, and like, does he know that Max is doing something she's not supposed to be doing? Is he actually just thinking they have a vibe? It's hard to say. And he also seems a little drunk, but then he leaves and Max is able to do her secret mission and get those papers to the Cabal, which now includes Magna also. And Ezekiel shows up at their little like uprising meeting. And then by the end of this episode, we get to see we get to see their newspaper.
Yep. It gets thrown on Max's desk and
during like a musical montage, I feel like.
Yep. And I did like the scene of, there was like a whole montage and it's like Daryl, Maggie, Gabriel and Aaron kind of like walking through a field, and she's sort of like bloodied, but it's like they do like very long shots of each of their faces, but they're united and you feel like they're gonna kick some ass or something. But
I mean, sure, maybe they will, but Judith and RJ, there's a scene in the earlier
still
episode,
inside. Yeah,
they're like going to school. At least Carol is with them, and that's one of the nice things that they have. Like, they haven't made anybody, I mean, I guess nobody's ever really been their full-time parents since Michonne left.
True.
But Daryl has been with them a lot, and now Carol is, and Jerry's isn't Jerry in Commonwealth?
He's in the Commonwealth. Yep.
So there's enough of this family group to share the load, but Jerry also has like 2 or 3 kids. We're gonna have to see how this is going to go from here, because now they are definitely not allowed back in the Commonwealth, presumably. And like, based on Hornsby's change of outfit, he was wearing this like white and red tie for most of the episode, and then in Oceanside, where he's got everybody tied up too. these are like their good faith partners, and I don't really get that one. He's wearing a different suit, so I assume he's gone back to the Commonwealth and like gotten some sort of, I don't know, maybe not, maybe he just travels with many suits. That I wouldn't put it past
Maybe.
Hornsby. We'll have to see like what the impacts are going to be of these decisions in the Commonwealth and for the citizens of Oceanside. By the way, in that lineup, still no Luke. I wonder if he's just off the show.
Yeah, maybe. But this all starts, and you have the whole Hornsby, the montage with like seeing the different communities and that, they are suffering now because of these actions. And then like the sort of big pinnacle thing at the end is the flipping of the coin. Lance flipping it to decide what's going to happen to Oceanside people. And that's kind of it for the finale. And so I did like it, and I liked all of this. We're gonna figure out, I guess, the last third of the season. But overall, really like the season. I like it. There's obviously some slight like criticisms and things like that, but I love the storytelling. And I think we'll see what the end is, but overall really just enjoyed watching this and talking about it.
Yeah, I think it made better by the presence of a couple of really strong villain characters between the character of Sebastian, Lance Hornsby 2 episodes ago, Carlson, and Pamela Milton, who unknown, really still kind of a question mark, but probably not 100% good because of her greed situation. We've got some interesting and relatable. Maybe Lance Hornsby isn't as relatable because he's still just like so weirdly motivated. Good villains to enjoy watching. Also, Rip Marco, we barely knew ye. He probably only had like 8 lines of dialogue in the whole show. But we should have known when you started to get some more this season that you weren't long for this.
Yeah, you were not long for the world.
Also, don't stand up after you set off a booby trap. Always stay crouched.
Yep.
Pro tip. And then next time we'll next time for Walking Dead season 11.3, I think will not be until the fall, kind of like traditional timing of the beginning of when that show comes out. But there's other stuff. I mean, Fear the Walking Dead is back on TV. Not that I think we're going to race to watch it.
Right. So that's it for this part. What are we talking about next time?
I think next time we are going to try and watch and talk about Doctor Strange if we can all get to the movie theaters to see it.
All right. Well, I will do my very best. And hopefully we will have Kyle Diaz as a special guest star.
Yeah, let's we'll try and line it up, and we'll certainly be trying to not skip another week in our podcast output. So fear not, gentle listeners, we shall return. If you want to talk to us about how you thought about 11.2, give us a holler. We're on Twitter at ReanimatedPcast. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and of course our show notes with links to the kind of vague and clickbaity articles that we talked about today will be online at reanimatedpodcast.com.
Thanks for listening. Until next time. Ciao.
Adios.